So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have with us Miss Natasha Mosby, the founder of the Men's Health and Wellness Conference about 4 years ago. How you doing today, Natasha?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me.
Hmm.
Yes.
Great, great. Glad to finally meet you. So, let me ask you something. Men's health.
Yeah, I know.
I can't tell that you don't follow. Just kidding. Yeah, yeah.
It's
I'm
like
like,
why men's health? Yes, yes. Um, so you want to know the story behind my
yes.
I want to have a men's health. So it comes with a few layers, and I think the first part I have to share is it came in a dream. I kid you not. My mother was my best friend. She passed away of cancer in 2010.
Mm,
I always had dreams as a little girl. I know that sounds a little awkward, but I've always had dreams and just visions. And 2018, I want to say 2017, I had a dream about my mother. And we were walking in this huge building, and she said, "I love what you did here." And I'm like, "What did I do?" And there was just men everywhere, just black men everywhere. And she said, "I liked how you called them." And I'm looking around, but what I noticed is that there were men going into different rooms. And I stopped and I said, and we start talking about, I just remember us talking about how men were hurting. And from that, I'm going to show other little piece. The other layer of this, I had a really good friend that died by suicide. And he
wow.
was really known in our community, Matira. And so when he took his life, I was totally taken back by that. But prior to that, I served as a president of his board. And him and I, early 2020, start talking about I'm sorry, 2000. I got back from out the school, 2002, 2003. We started talking about men's health. And I would check in with him over time. So when he took his life, have this dream about my mother. I just started thinking, and then the pandemic hit, and I said,
Mm,
I don't have the resources to put together anything about men. I don't have the knowledge of that. And I started having more dreams. And in this dream, God just started showing me people. And that was Dr. Shagag, Maria Shagag. And I was sitting with her talking to her. And I said, I really feel compelled to talk about men's health. I said, with the death of my friend, and
right.
also just watching men, right, in my own family
Mhm.
and in my own community, and also men I saw in therapy having some challenges around their health, teaching it at the School of Social Work. And I was like, okay, God, this is what you want me to do, but how is that going to be received? I don't want to speak. And so I said, well, if I want to create the atmosphere for this, I want it to be for men by men, and I want to gather men to speak to the men. And I said, God, just show me. And the first person faced was Dr. Sheldon. So I saw him just on platforms, and I reached out and I said, I know you don't know me, but I would really love to talk to you about a vision I've had. And he said, say less. And so Dr. Jacobs has been by my side through all of this and just gathering the men to speak to the man around the health. And so just dating back to Dr. Shagag, when I told her, she goes, I'm going to put you in contact with Miss Kathy. Miss Kathy was over City Hall, was over the resources at City Hall at the time. So when I met her, and it was my first time in City Hall, I said, this is it. This is the place that was in my dream. So that's how we.
Wow.
So, when I
Wow.
shared that story, and I said this wasn't something I'm like, I want to put a conference on for men. I'm very, a believer, and I try to lead how God has asked me to go, and this is where I am, and I'm just grateful for the men that step forward and say, okay, Tasha, how can we help, our men? And I will provide the resources. I will do what God has called me to do, and so I'm here for year 4.
Well, it's
Wow.
one thing to have a vision to help men, particularly from a mental health space. It's another to have the skill set and the education to do it. I understand that you're working on your doctorate. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, I am on chapter 5. Let us pray. And that is in health psychology, just looking at the integrated systems and how do we heal, right, from a collective mind, body, spirit. So that's been my call, not just in my work that I'm doing, but also in my private practice. I do now work full time. I was in the School of Social Work teaching there for 9 years, and now I'm in the School of Medicine, working in the Pediatric Access Line program for integrating mental health and physical health for children. So, all of this just in divine
So,
time has played its part for me.
so what do you mean when you say the collective?
When I say collective, I what I realize is we don't always heal on therapy couches. right?
Mm.
I do believe in there's community healing. And so when we're bringing men, family, children together, there is something in the collective about a healing process. And so just looking at the Men's Health Conference, what I've learned over the past couple of years, I see these men sending out emails to me, say, Tasha, based on this one event, we've been getting together, we've been going bowling, fishing. And so it's the social collective
Awesome.
too, right? So it's the collectiveness, it's the fellowship. And that's what I'm hoping. And some of that too, they've been going into some therapy offices. I know Dr. Jacob shared last year about his health journey. And from that, I've counted 42 men have reached out and said, thank you for that speaker. I'm now following up with my health. So there's something in the collective coming together to share their lived experiences and how can I help you and give you the resources to also go on your health journey.
So since you started this 4 years ago, have you seen a significant uptick in the number of men that you're seeing yourself or that
Yes.
your colleagues are seeing?
Yes, I was just on another podcast there, and one of the guys called in. He goes, "You're like the man whisperer," and I'm like, "I'm far from that." I said, "If you only knew," but
Mm.
I do have men that are asking to, of course, come in with their wives or families and just have a space for to talk about their lived experiences and what's happening with them mentally, physically, but also spiritually. And I do my very best to provide a non-biased, culturally sensitive space to go there. And if I'm not the one, I'm referring out, right? So I give them an opportunity to meet with me first, something like this, a free 15-minute virtual meet and greet, talk about my method of modalities. I'm not your typical couch therapist. Um, I believe in the whole community resources as well. So there are men that I do see not in my office, but we get a yoga mat and go outside to the park, right, and just kind of sit in nature, sit in space, and so that's important. So I like them to know my modality. How do I practice? I do believe it takes, if they have children, family, although it may be individual, I do invite them. Hey, maybe our fourth session, you bring your spouse, you bring your children to talk about some support you need in this healing journey that you're on.
So, Dr. Sheldon, what made you answer the call? Why did you feel so passionate about this outside of being a male yourself?
But first of all, I mean that's quite the vision and the story and
Yeah.
the testimony, I should say,
Yeah.
Natasha. And so, thank you. So for
Absolutely.
me, I think it's it was a no brainer. Obviously, some of my own like health, mental health, physical health, you know, uh, challenges over the years made it easy for me to kind of say, what, I need to help out where I can so that I can spread as much awareness, because I think you can't. It's hard to intervene without the awareness, right? And so I think that providing the education and that awareness around my own struggles, I think was paramount, because it gave me that sort of that firsthand voice in terms of what was going on with me, what helped me to get through what I was going through, and and rewind. Let's rewind this. Like, so for me, at first I was started with post traumatic stress. I was diagnosed with post traumatic stress. I was in grad school from some trauma that happened when I was about 14 years of age. So 10 years of just suffering, 10 years of not receiving any help or support, and seeing how my life really deteriorated as a result of that. And then some years later, like a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And so being able to share that experience, because for me, I didn't have anyone telling me like, hey, you need to go to the doctor, you need to do this, because most of the men in my life, they weren't going to the doctor. And so because of fear of or the stigma attached to being a male, and we deal with things as a male, it's kind of weak to seek help, or there's just different misconceptions that you hear. So a lot of men in my family would share those things. I would hear it all the time growing up. And so for me, it was paramount to stand on faith and to say, what, here's my testimony. This is what I went through. If I didn't go to the doctor, I'll be in a much different situation right now. And I'll be sharing a whole different story. And so that's why this conference is important, because it brings men as well as some women together as well, right? And we're fellowshipping. We're talking about some very sensitive topics that in most other spaces, are hard, or so much harder to talk about. So here we are in the safe space, talking about health and men's health, and just just the testimonies that you hear from so many other men, is really is life changing.
Yeah.
Can I say something about the women part? It's interesting. We have Friday night, which is the reception night, and that's where everyone is included. Saturday is just for the men. So
Okay.
the kickback I got from my lovely ladies in our community, I said, listen, ladies, this when I tell you I'm so intentional, about how things play out and just understanding that. And I said, when I research how many support groups, it's not to lock our women, how many support group spaces that we have for us, I said I lost track. Right. But
Mm.
when I looked at how
Yep.
many spaces are for men, and I'm the oldest of two boys, one of my brothers is a police officer. So I'm always having in my head too, like, hey, where do you go for your mental health? Right? What are you doing for this? He was like, Tasha, I go see who. But I could not count how many spaces we had just for men by men. And I said, I would love for this Saturday just to be for the men, no female, no children. This is where men get to lay it out there without judgment. And even I stay out of those groups. I want to peek in and listen, but I stay out. I don't go into the workshops. I allow them to have that space. And I just, if y'all need something, let me know. We're out here with the team. But I think that's so important that they have that, because I know I lost track how many that we have.
Well,
So yeah.
well, Flex, let me ask you a question. You know, I still consider you to be an alpha male. And do you think that men would really open up in an environment that was a mixed crowd the same way they would open up in an environment with nothing but men?
You know, it depends. It depends on their comfortability. For me, it doesn't matter whether it's a mixed crowd or it's with kids or whatnot. I kind of been speaking, globally, for the last 20 years. So I've gotten used to speaking in front of large crowds. So that kind of helped me get over that fear. And then as I started, like really, I call it looking in the mirror. Only we know the things that we've done and what we've been through. Maybe this group because we hung out with this crowd or this crowd over here. So, I just started like having a hard time really looking at myself in a mirror and saying, this is who you are. And once I started doing that, and then of course, rededicating myself to Christ and just as a male, really understanding that these great men that mythologically I thought were like 10,000 pounds and 10 foot tall, they all failed in some way. So that helped me to understand like, wow, okay, I'm not the only one. So I do, but I think it takes what you like, quote unquote, if you identify me to an alpha male, I think it takes very, very powerful men who have a visual platform that people have seen and built a relationship from a distance, and then them being open and doing so. And that allows other men to do it. I know just since I started opening my mouth, talking to, people like Michael J. White and other actors that I never knew their background story, and hearing that, and then just hearing people like The Rock, being open and saying that he struggled with being suicidal when he didn't make it in college. I mean, just imagine the ripple effect because we identify him to an alpha male. That's all the movies that he plays. So people look at those type of people like, wow, if he's going through it and he's being honest, I'm not the only one. And that's the thing I think that really helps with these type of group with men, us sitting here and listening, and just understanding you're not alone. You're not a weirdo. You're not the only one who goes through this. You're not weak. You're actually strong and being able to actually come forward and talk about the problems you have.
And ladies and gentlemen, Flex will be a keynote speaker on Friday night. He has an amazing story. He's very prepared to, I don't know, sometimes he make you laugh, sometimes he make you cry, and sometimes he help you realize you have no reason to feel sorry for yourself about anything. So I know Dr. Sheldon and soon to be Dr. Molly, we already claiming it.
Thank you.
You guys are experts at the addressing the mental health aspects of things, and I think it was very amazing and a lot of foresight to put them both together, understanding that your mental health and physical health go hand in hand. Now
Mm,
I'm going to come back and bring up something from a conference I was at earlier today. But Greg's background, his education is in kinesiology. And
Mhm.
Greg, can you kind of talk to us about that connection between the mind and the body, and how getting the body active can actually improve or help you with you having depression or going through mental health states.
Well, hopefully I'm not stepping on Dr. Jacobs here a little bit, but that's more nuanced than we want to actually, or than we actually give it credit for, because depending on, it's all individualized. Each person is going to be a little bit different. But if you have someone who's having a mental health crisis of any kind, your stress levels are going to be through the roof. And that comes with a hormonal response that can actually be made worse if you're not programming the exercise correctly. So let's just take cortisol, for example. If you're stressed out and you're depressed, cortisol levels are going to be high. And you two probably know you have a lot of issues with sleep because your cortisol levels are high. It amps you up, keeps you awake. Now you add even what is considered a positive stress like exercise, it increases cortisol levels. So you have it here already. Now you're amping it up even more. And if they're doing it after work at night and they go home, they're downing coffee, then their sleep patterns go off and then they're up all night thinking. And that's never good for someone who's in those situations. So in those cases, someone who's done enough background checks or background information on things might have them back off. They might be doing something along the lines of yoga or Tai Chi or something that actually brings those levels down. So in this case, going at it, lifting heavy weights or hitting a boxing bag or a heavy bag of some sort, that's actually the wrong thing to do, even though the fitness industry might say it's the right thing to do.
What about the day in the morning time? Is that because I know for me, if I work out at night, I cannot sleep. If I sleep a couple hours and wake up. So I know for me, the 5:30 in the morning is what works for me. It actually gives me more energy throughout the day. So working out in the morning is that a better solution or a better place to start?
I don't want to say yes right off the bat because I don't know. Because again, you take 100
Everybody's
people in a
different.
situation, it's going to be 100 different programs.
Yeah.
And putting this blanket statement out there or following what some guy on social media is doing could be a recipe. It could work, or it could be a recipe for disaster. It could be somewhere in between.
I get that because some people they're night owls. They just getting started at 10, 11 o'clock. Where at 10 o'clock, I've already put in about an hour and a half of sleep already.
Remember, like I said yesterday, or in the last conversation, these internal battles can be like a rust. That if you don't take care of it, the rust is just going to get worse, and it's going to spread until eventually whatever the rust is on just breaks.
Right. And also just realizing the deficiency that we have in our trace minerals and vitamins. So all of us are deficient in vitamin D. It's like Greg has a joke, like unless you walk out and you're butt naked for an hour in the sun, you're going to be deficient, but all of us do. And there's a tremendous
that was paraphrased.
Yeah. There's a tremendous, relationship with just how you feel mentally and mood wise with your vitamin D, and just people are not aware of that. I mean, you can go out and train and eat properly and do all the proper things you want, but if your trace minerals are off, your body's not going to respond correctly. It's not going to act correctly. So I call it like a virus in a computer. You're doing all these things, you think the computer's doing all these things, and in the background it's not acting properly. So you also have to be aware of those things also.
That's
So
your
again-
mood stabilizer.
So again, guys, we're here today talking about the fourth annual Men's Health and Wellness Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, on the 27th and 28th. Ms. Mosley, can you kind of take us through some of the events that's taking place, some of the speakers, and some of the, I heard that it will be online. There are going to be actual tests being done on site to provide support for those who may not have had them, or those who don't have insurance, or those who just will get the energy to do it because you're around other people. Can you guys share with us about that?
Yeah, so the 27th is going to be open to the community, and that's again our speakers. We're going to have I think 10 vendors or 8 vendors there, not vendors, but those are specializing in mental health, physical health will be on site as well. And the 27th is also an opportunity for our community to kind of get a feel for what's happening there, the purpose of the Men's Health Conference, and a snapshot of what the men are going to be getting on the 28th, which is the actual workshops, the breakouts, and all that. And of course, Mr. Rill is going to be our keynote for the 27th. There's going to be food there, and I just want to give major shout outs to the city of Las Vegas because they provide all of this
Wow.
for this. And I mean, from the dinner, from every single part of this, they have just been, a pleasure to work with. So shout out to the city of Las Vegas for making all this happen. And so this is an opportunity for the 27th to get to know what is Men's Health Month. A lot of folks didn't know that June is dedicated to Men's Health Month, right? So that's one stigma we need to talk about. And why are we not talking about the importance of Men's Health Months? What's the purpose of it? What are we looking at in terms of the statistics around Black and brown men being diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, prostate cancer, looking at some of those major health factors, and also mental health on that side. So it's an opportunity to get to some education. That's what that's about, mingling, meeting each other. And then the 28th is the work. I call it the work. But the work, I say it's more of engagement. I teach, that's my background. So when I thought about this conference, I said, let's have a framework that we can all fit, right? So the framework is an 8-dimensional framework. And that's addressing our mental, physical, spiritual, occupational, intellectual, all the things that talks about our well-being, our whole well-being. So the conference is framed around that, right? So we have our spiritual. How does spiritual well-being play a part of our ultimate, our whole health? Physical, our occupational wellness, right? Work comes with stress. How do we, address some of those things? And environmental wellness. We don't think enough about how our environment plays a part of on our mood. I know I heard when I was backstage, just the wind. It's windy outside, right? So my daughter's kind of cranky right now. She just had her allergy medicine, but I understand the connection between the environment and how it affects her mood. And so talking to her about it. And so how do I help my even 9-year-old, 10-year-old take some active steps to make sure she's feeling better? So all those things plays a part. And so every speaker that we have on the 28th represent a part of that wellness wheel. So we have doctors that's talking about our cardiovascular disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, the mental health side. We have a relationship expert. We talk about those social wellness wheels. Dr. Jacobs around mental health, physical, PTSD. So there is a professional, and not just professional, but people that have lived experiences. There's something about a lived experience, and kind of also your professional background that I don't want to knock the individuals and say, hey, I may not be an LCSW or PhD, but I've gone through these steps, I've gone through this healing process. And so I'm a part of this community, I'm a part of these talks. And so we do have our paraprofessionals, as we call them, that's a part of these conversations and our panels. And so, these voices are important to hear from them. And it's from an engagement and not a preaching, but a truly being in community with one another, like talking. And let me ask you a question. So the men, of course, come with their style, but I want to make sure that the audience can feel like I'm sitting next to a cardiovascular, person who I can actually have a conversation with. I may not have this experience. So it's to truly also provide access to say these things exist and you look like me. Wow. Right. So I'm trusting you with this information.
So again, we're here today talking about the fourth annual Men's Health and Wellness in Las Vegas, Nevada, on the 27th and 28th of June. We're gonna have to get you and Dr. Sheldon back to dig into a little bit more. I've gone to many different conferences, and then you have the conference itself, but most people don't have what's called a debrief.
Yes.
So what we would like to do is to bring you guys back with some of those guests there specifically, and have some engagement where we let the participants know that we're going to do these things and allow you to join us on the space, whether it be through this channel or through YouTube or whatever, to ask those questions. Because you go to something, you get home and you like, man, I wish I'd asked that question. Man, I would have thought about that. But create a space so we can bring those people back in and have a conversation. Earlier today, one of the things that kind of struck me, they mentioned the fact that particularly when it comes to young African American males, where their behaviors, some of their behaviors when they're younger are really attributed to a mental health um, situation, whether it's inherited or whether it's from the home environment, whether it's from trauma that they're experiencing, and they get labeled as bad behavior versus those mental health concerns being addressed. Particularly, parents being sent to jail. Unfortunately, in a situation, there's drug abuse, physical abuse, lack of basic needs in the home. So, Dr. Sheldon, from your experience, as we would go into this, because men become boys, I mean, boys become men. And a lot of things that we are dealing with as men that you're going to address in the conference that's related specifically to the physical health, mental health, emotional, everything, it goes back to what our childhood. So do you agree that that's an issue and concern that in order for us to address the man, we got to go back and address the child? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, that's pretty profound there. You, no, absolutely. I think that most of us have experienced some level of trauma in our childhoods, and a lot of us have haven't dealt with it or addressed it. So we're carrying around all this baggage. We're carrying all these maladaptive behaviors, all these different things from our past. And in many respects, were never addressed. And so what happens is it affects us in our interpersonal relationships, our marriages, affects us at work, affects us in almost every setting that you can think of. And so I think it's very important that that we find ways to heal. 'Cause I think so you mentioned the black community. Yes, the black community. I feel as a whole, we have not, we've never learned how to heal, and some of that has to do with just the stigma when it comes to mental health, physical health. But I'll go back, to especially mental health. I feel like we're just now starting to talk about mental health. I feel like physical health. I think we've been talking about the importance of physical health for some years now, but it's the mental health piece that's because I know like in a lot of different settings that I'm in, as soon as you hear the word mental health or mental illness, like people run the opposite way. And so
Yeah.
even with that, with the vernacular, like for instance, one of the organizations that I serve on, National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, which is the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. One of the reasons why I chose to run to serve on that board was because so I can change the name, take the illness out of our name, because there's so much stigma attached to the word illness,
Yeah.
and you attach mental to that, it is even more stigmatizing. So I think it's very important that we're aware of that we're aware of the vernacular. Even post-traumatic stress disorder, I don't like to use the word disorder. I use post-traumatic stress because you think about disorder, you think about trauma. When our bodies respond to trauma, it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation or event, right? So you put the disorder onto that, it makes people say, well, wait a minute, I have a problem, there's something wrong with me. When in fact you're responding to an abnormal situation. So again, I think it's very important that how we talk about trauma, how we talk about mental health, how we talk about physical health. I think it is so important, and I think the great thing about this conference is we are able to do just that. We're able to really come together, fellowship, be in community with one another, hold space for one another, but to also to normalize some of these challenges that we have that we're faced with essentially.
So we're going to we're coming to a close. You're going to get all the goods at the event. And we would love to at a later time have both of you back on independently to speak specifically, because I've learned a little about your stories. Really want to learn more about Dr. Sheldon experience, how things go in his health, the impact it has had on him mentally, as a father dealing with that, I call it the big C, and how that has happened. I have three questions left. All right. Three questions left. First one goes to you, Flex. Um, what do you hope to translate? What do you hope to communicate? What do you hope that the audience gets from attending and hearing your keynote on Friday?
Well, if they know anything about me, I heard anything about me, then we invest power into people. When we see them, immediately invest power into people. Men, we invest power into a woman based just on our thoughts. It's not even actuality. So
Right.
if
The energy.
anyone knows me, or after Sheldon announces and give a little bit bio on me, so it's like all these great things that I've done. And my point, a lot of people see all the glitz and the glory of someone, but they don't see any grit and the glory. So I just want to take them through what my life is really about, just really unveil who I am. And I know from the multitude of things that I've been with, it's going to echo with some people there. And there now I'm human. I'm not this super person who've done all these things. Now I'm humanized. And then hopefully they can feel like empowered. Like, wow, if this guy done all these great things and he suffers or goes through what I go through, maybe, it's just I had this slogan called Dare to Dream. And for a lot of us, our dreams are just taken away as children, and we just don't dream no more. So just for them to dare to dream that they can is a wide opening for everything, because other than that, the mind is just closed off and it is what it is. So that's what I hope to be able to translate to people, that through my story, I am a human. And then just the deceptiveness of the devil talking all of these negative thoughts into my head, constantly saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, you don't deserve to be here, take your life, you don't deserve to breathe, all that stuff. Just the resilience of understanding the bigger picture that's going on, and just not giving in. Yeah, and I mean, I don't beat my chest about my faith, but I try to walk it in my acts now. And so, there is a hell, and in my ignorance, meaning lack of knowledge, because I don't know everything about hell, but I know that all the horror that I've been through here on this planet, hell is a billion times worse than that. So every day that we concede or fight to be here, every second, we have the ability to change. We have the ability to pivot. But once you give up or you do that final act, it's a wrap. It's just going to be the most unthinkable. Even the Bible said, grinding and gnashing of teeth. So if anybody ever been in real pain, you've gnashed your teeth, you've ripped your skin open. I've been in that type of pain where I've just gnashed my teeth, where I just really took my fingernails and just opened my skin up in pain. So you imagine that. So that's what I'm trying to do, and my point that I want to try to get across to people.
And ladies and gentlemen, we could be here for an hour and still not get through all the amazing things that Flex experienced. I encourage you, Google Flex. Google before you come to the event, and you'll be amazed about his experiences. Um, Ms. Mosley, what would you hope to accomplish from this? What would be you want the takeaway to be from the event?
I My hope is that the men enter a space and just take it off. So when I say take it off, let your swords down, take off your capes, right? And I say that because I'm my dad's only child. My dad, Southern man, born and raised, and I just left Mississippi from burying his brother. And at the funeral, I looked over. My dad just had this stoic look, right? And he loved his brother. So we were walking out to lay him to rest, and I said, Dad, I know this hurt. And he goes, it does. I want them to just acknowledge it. It hurts where it hurts. Let's identify the wounds. I very careful about, like you said, language. To identify if there are wounds, let's call it out. Let's take the bandages off and let's heal it. That's the only way you're going to heal it. And so giving my dad permission, but me saying, Dad, I know this hurt. Like I saw my dad proud shoulders, and he's an amazing man, just drop. And he go, this hurt, and we cried together, right? So I want that space for me, and I think it's so important. I'm born of a black man. I have black brothers. I have uncles, and I just want there to be a generation of healed men, right, joining this cause. And so that's my take on that. But yes, to create the
Dr.
space, we can do that.
Dr. Sheldon, 4 years in, and you see the growth. And why, in your words, why should men, really men of all ethnic backgrounds, why should men come to this event?
I would say because it can save your life. I think that obviously most of some of these diseases that we are um, being faced with or are faced with, I should say. A lot of them, some of them are preventable, obviously, but there's some of them, are I call it silent killers, where you may have something and you may not even know you have it because you're not going to the doctor or you're not doing your getting your labs done like you should. So I think this conference will, do just that. It will educate. It will spread awareness, but it will also take you down, um, you know, the, the journey of so many men that have either dealt with something or are dealing with something, and you will learn firsthand like what it is that you need to do in order to put yourself in a position to not to be impacted on that level. So to take some ownership of your health and to be proactive in your health, so that if there is something that's there, you're ahead of it, and you can prolong your life, because that's the important part to all of this, is just that we're dying at such young ages now, and a lot of it, it can be avoidable.